In this RPA lecture series, we are going to discuss today a very important topic, which is called variables. And because variables are very frequently used in each and every RPA project, so we are starting with variable. We are starting this hands-on session with variable. So here on my screen, you can see I have opened UiPath Studio Pro community. And in Studio Pro community, in the last lecture, in the last session, we have discussed about how we can create a project. Now, with this blank project, I'm going to create a new sequence by pressing a button here and by pressing this option, by clicking this option called sequence. Here I'll name it variable demo 1 and I'll say create. So once I click on the button called create, this variable demo, this sequence will be appeared on my screen. This is called designer panel. This is called activities panel, and this is called properties panel. So I'm just revising it because we have discussed it in the last video about these three panels, and this is called ribbon pane. All right. So we are these four important panels are ribbon panel or ribbon pane we call it, activities panel, designer panel, and properties panel. But today we are going to discuss about one more important panel, which is called variable panel, which you will find on the left corner, left bottom corner of your designer panel, and it is called variables panel. So once you click on variables panel, this panel will open. And if you want to create, manage, or remove variables, all these things can be done through this variable panel. So guys, let's understand first of all, what is a variable? So variable is just like a container which is used to hold some value inside it. And wherever in the process, in the project, if you want to use that value, you can just call that variable and you can use that variable. So it is just like a temporary storage, dynamic storage, which keeps on changing its values. All right. So we can assign some names to that variable, we can assign some numbers to the variable, we can assign so many different things to that variable when we have created it. All right. Now talking about variables in UiPath. So when it comes to variables in UiPath, we have three major operations or three major tasks we can do with variables. First is creating a variable. So variable creation can be done in three different ways. The very first way is to use this variable panel. Suppose if I click here and if I write variable name, vname, and if I click somewhere else, this variable is created. Another way of doing it is using designer panel, which we are going to see in few minutes in the same video. And the third way is using properties panel, which also we are going to practice today. So this is how these are the three ways which can be used to create variables. Now, the second thing which you can do with the variables is remove variables. Suppose if you want to remove variables, you have another two ways to remove variables. One is right clicking here, and once you say delete, the variable will be removed or deleted. Or if you want to remove all the unused variable, you can use this button called remove unused variable from the designer panel. So not from the ribbon panel. All right. So these are the two ways to delete the variable. Now the third thing which comes about variables are, that is manage variables. So managing a variable means to decide its properties, to give a default value is called managing a variable. So how we can manage the variable? Suppose if I've created a variable with name vname, I can change the variable type. We are going to discuss about these types later, but I can change the type of this variable. I can change the scope of this variable, and I can assign some default value to this variable so that I can read this value, or I can use that value whenever I call that variable. So changing variable type, changing the scope, and assigning default value is called managing a variable. So there are three important things which are related with a variable. One is creating a variable, second is removing a variable, and third is managing a variable. Now let's understand what are the different types of variables we have. So talking about some popular types, popular variable types, which we usually use in automation workflows, they are text variables, which are also known as string variables. Okay, so in variables, we have discussed about how we can manage the variables, how we can create the variables, and how we can remove the variables. Now, the next thing which we are going to discuss about is how we can use these variables. So variables can only be used inside the workflow, and if you want any value to be, to be used across the workflows, then variables are not helpful in that condition. So for that, you need to have arguments. Argument topic we are going to discuss in next session, next video. But today we are going to practice. Today we are going to learn about in and outs of variables. So just to understand how variables work, I'll create a workflow which will help you to understand how we can create and how we can manage the variables. So for that, I'm using the very first activity. So activities are the options which are available, which are pre-programmed options, which are available in the activities panel. So the very first activity I am going to take here is input dialog. So input dialog is the activity which is used to take input from the user. So here I am creating a workflow to take user's birth year, and on the basis of user's birth year, I'm going to calculate the age of the user using that variable. So here the text boxes which are available here, or the input which we need to give in input dialog, are dialog title, which means the window will appear with this title. So I'll name it enter age. Next is input label. This label is something like a question which will be asked from the user. Please enter your birth year. And this is the input type. So suppose if you want to take multiple choices from the if you want to give multiple choices to the user and the user will select the choice, then we can we can use this option. And if we want to give a text box to the user so that user can type anything, we can select the text box. And here we have to specify the variable which we have created for storing the age of the user. So I'll delete this variable first of all, and I'll create a new variable from variable panel, and the very first way through which we can create the variable. So here I'll name it v age, not ph, v entered year. So user will enter the year, but as you all know that year cannot be a string. So year could be number. So I'll take it integer 32. So as we were discussing about the type of variable we have is, we have string type of variable to store text. We have integer 32 type of variable to store number. We have Boolean type of variable. If you can see here, we have Boolean type of variable, which is used to store true or false. Then we have array type of variable, which we can use for creating array of string, array of number, or any type of array with some items in it. Then we have list, we have date and time, data table, and few generic variables like email, body, subject, etc. So these variables and its types we are going to discuss whenever we use that variable. But right now I need an integer variable to store the number or store the age of, to store the, so I'll change it, enter your birth year. So I have created this variable with default value as null, and because I have not taken multiple sequences here, so I'll not get any option here. If I take multiple sequences here, so I can select the scope of this variable. This we are going to discuss later. But here I'll call the variable which I have created for entering the year. So this is the variable which I have taken for input dialog, for taking the value from the user. Next thing we are going to do here is, we are going to check the year with the current year. We are going to check the age. So for checking the age, I will use assign activity, which is also a very popular activity. And on the left hand side, I have to create a variable which is present age. So I'll name it v present age. Again, I need it of integer 32 type. And here I'll take v present age is equals to, I can write any expression using assign activity. So I'm writing that expression v present age is equal to 2021, which is current year, minus v entered year. So when you will subtract the entered year from the current year, that will give you the value of his age, and his age can be displayed using some message box or some other option. So now let's take third activity here, a message box. So usually a message box is used to display the output. So I can mention it like the current age of the user is, and along with that, I want to concatenate this with v present age. But as the age is an integer and message box is capable of only printing these string values, so I have to change it to string. So I'll type 2.toString. Now the exclamation mark is removed. So if the exclamation mark is there, that means you have some syntactical or semantical error here. So you need to correct that error, and then you can proceed with the execution. Now let's have a recap of this activity, what we have done. We have created two variables, v entered year, v present age. We have used this v entered year in input dialog from where we have taken the user's input. So this dialog will appear whenever we execute this. This dialog will appear first. It will take the input in the form of v entered year. It will calculate the present age using assign activity, and it will print the output through the message box. So quickly, let's execute this and see what output we get. See, it is asking me, please enter your birth year. So I have to enter my birth year. I'll just say 1987. So if I say 1987, and if I say OK, then the current age of user is 34. So it has given me the current age. So this is the message box through which the output is displayed. And previously you have seen the input dialog box, or the dialog box through which the bot or the workflow has taken the input. And if you have realized that the value which is entered by the user is used here, and the value is holded by this variable, the value is stored by this variable, and we have used this value here for calculating the value of present age, and then present age is called in this message box to display the output. So this is how we can use variables for multiple purposes. I hope you have understood how we can use variables. In the coming sessions also, in the coming videos also, we are going to discuss more about variables. Thank you for watching this video.